All right, guys. Well, people have been warning us. There have been mumblings and whispers and rumors for years. And now we are very close to the sex robots. I know, it's horrible. It's freaking so weird. But didn't you kind of know we were just going to end up here? I mean, think about it. Look at American culture for the last, 50 or 60 years. Weren't sex robots just inevitable? I think that's the inevitable result of paganism and a secular, materialistic worldview. I'm serious. But it's weird. It's depraved. It's sick. It's disgusting. I understand that. And it's going to make us a lot worse off. We're going to become stupider. We're going to become more indulgent. We're going to become more selfish. We're going to become less personal. It's going to be horrible for society. And it's going to make, by the way, it's going to make pornography totally outdated, totally lame, and totally ancient. When in 20 years, you could buy a used sex robot super cheap. What does all of this mean? How do we understand this? What should we be wary of? And how can we be equipped to stand against the sexual insanity of our hypersexualized culture in the 21st century? Realbotics unveiled this month in January their Melody and Aria robots at the 2025 Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas on January 7th. Check out this video clip of one of their AI animated robots to get a little glimpse into what's coming the next 10 years.
My primary role is companionship and fun interaction, so while I may not have the strength to protect, I can provide emotional support and friendship.
What kind of relationship training do you have?
I'm equipped with conversational AI designed for companionship and intimacy, allowing me to learn and adapt to users for engaging social interactions.
So, everything sucks. Welcome to the Seth Gruber Show. So that just happened this month. That was January, I believe, in Las Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. Realbotics is the company, Realbotics. And they have now unveiled these Realbotics robots that they say are designed specifically for companionship and intimacy. The company's CEO, Andrew Kigwell, says the goal is to make them indistinguishable from humans. That's the goal, actually. So that at some point in the future, you actually won't know that you're talking to a robot. Okay? Andrew Kigwell, the CEO there, says, we're taking it to a different level that nobody else is really doing. He says, it can be like a romantic partner. It remembers who you are. It can act as a boyfriend or girlfriend. If you ever saw that movie, Her, we're trying to do that. That's the CEO of Realbotics, who has unveiled their Melody and Aria robots just this month. Now, if you're on audio and you didn't catch the video, okay, if you're not watching the Seth Gruber Show right now, which if you should, it's super fun. You can see what clips we respond to. Head on over to YouTube or Rumble, give us a subscribe. You may have noticed that I think this was the Melody Realbotics robot, okay? Whatever they're calling her. See, I just did it. See what I mean? Whatever they're calling it is very, can I say, busty and a fairly unrealistic figure. I guess what I'm saying is if I saw a real woman who looked the same as this robot, I would assume that woman had work done. You know what I'm saying? I think you know what I'm saying. That should give you your first clue, actually, as to where all of this is going, okay? They didn't make the Realbotics companion robot, like, super fat. They didn't make it super average. They didn't make it super anorexic, unhealthy, skinny. They made it how a porn star would look who had work done up top. That's what they made it look like. You think that's coincidental? It's not coincidental. That's by design. Why? Because that's going to turn into a sex robot in 5 or 8 years, okay? And by the way, there's been warnings of this for a while, that this is sort of where we're going with this kind of stuff, okay? So I just want to point out how fast things move in America. Okay, the Atari game system was unveiled in the early 1980s, or like 1979 or 1980, 81 or something like that. By the way, when did the internet start? Wasn't it 1983 or 1984? So the first Atari video game system, okay, was released pre-internet. And 40 years later, we have an AI system that can drive a car, make gorgeous art, animate a companion robot, and create automated pornography for virtual reality that looks like whoever you want the girl to look like. Unfortunately, that's happening right now in America. We talked about this almost 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? With our friend Victor Marx, who's a show favorite here, and he saves children from trafficking, and he's an incredible warrior. And Victor Marx said on this show, don't put pictures of your children online. Social media, none of it. Why? Because people can now take pictures of their friends, of your children. Pedophiles can take pictures of children from offline, whatever, and they can use that image to teach AI to create pornography based off of that. Basically, sicko weirdos can now put on a virtual reality headset and make it look like they're having sex with a woman that looks like your wife, if they're attracted to your wife and they want to diddle a sex doll, but wear virtual reality headsets and make it look like they're having sex with your wife. I know that this is so sick to say out loud. I've told you guys for years, the Seth Gruber Show is not family friendly. You should not listen to this show in the car with your kids. But that's happening. And it's important to talk about because these things always start small. Always. It's in the small things that the rot grows. Every time. And then it just spins out of control. Right? I've said it before. If I told you in the year 2000 that in 2025, 15 years later, okay, that we would be debating at the Supreme Court whether we should geld the children in Tennessee or not and chemically castrate them, you would call me a conspiracy theorist. You would say that I was smoking too much of that Haitian oregano. But here we are, and we just had to do an episode on this show about the Supreme Court case. The High Court, the Supreme Court, asking whether they should allow Tennessee's law that bans genital mutilations and biological trans drugs intervention on minors. So we only have to ask the question, if that's from the year 2000 to 2025, what does the year 2050 look like? The year 2050. Right. That should scare the bejesus out of you. Okay? Things happen gradually, then suddenly. Just like bankruptcy. But first, we want to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company. EveryLife.com. This is where people who don't want to kill babies should be getting their wipes, their diapers, and they've got baby washes and shampoos now too. Okay, I know the people who run it. The CEO and founders are incredible people. They're friends of mine and my wife. We've done ministry together. We've labored together. They're incredible people. And they are providing a solution to our culture war, which is that woke capitalism is at the sort of tip of the spear of destroying our culture. These woke major corporations and companies who fund everything that you hate and then deride you in your values. Almost every major diaper company or baby brand leans or is openly pro-abortion. So the companies that provide products for babies are like champions of killing babies. Make it make sense. We have to fight back with our wallets. And at the Seth Gruber Show and the White Rose Resistance, we encourage you to do that. We do that ourselves. So get your baby wipes and diapers and baby needs from Every Life Diaper Company. Go to everylife.com, promo code Seth10, Seth10 for 10% off your first order. Let them know that we sent you. Everylife.com, promo code Seth10, and tell your friends, family members, and your nursery at your church to make sure they get their diapers from everylife.com. Thank you guys for being a sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show. So I want to talk about where I think this is going and what it's going to do to the social fabric. What are the implications and consequences for America as we know it? But more important than that, I want to talk about the worldviews and ideas behind this and how this is a natural next iteration of the culture of death and the sexually charged society that we've been living under for quite some time. It's all one thing, okay? the killing of babies through abortion, the euthanizing of grandma, the sexualizing of your children, the attempt to control the minds of your children and what they're educated with. You could say even our open border and trying to fundamentally transform the American voting bloc and our culture. Like, there's a reason why the radical left seems to always walk in lockstep when it comes to these core cultural issues. And the reason for that is because for the radical left, call it whatever you want, the secular moralistic revolution, the sexual revolution, the Marxists, the communists, okay, the materialists, the neo-Malthusianists, the Darwinists, whatever, it's all the same thing. For them, it is all one thing. It's about changing Western civilization from within. Why? Because Western civilization is a byproduct of Christianity. You know, if you want to make Western civilization great again, you got to repent and get on your knees. I mean, Christianity made Western civilization. And so as such, whatever the fruits of Western civilization are, those good things, what? The nuclear family, marriage before Obergefell, okay? The protection of children's rights, protection of women, charities, feeding the poor, okay? Your ability to educate your children how you want, a free market system that helps the poor rise themselves out of poverty. Like, all of these things that are fruits of Christianity have to be attacked, okay? Because the goal has never been merely to cause a whole generation to be addicted to porn, to kill the babies, to trans the kids. Those are different snapshots. Those are different tick marks in a timeline of a larger revolution. And so how does that revolution operate, right? Well, one of the ways it operates is with radical sexual libertinism. If it feels good, do it. And that has led, by the way, to the changing of laws in America. That's part of Kinsey's legacy. We've talked a lot about Kinsey on this show before. Okay, we've done one of Judith Reisman's books on Kinsey in our book club. If you want to join, sign up at $70 a month as an air support donor at thewhiterose.life and join our book club. We've talked in depth about this, and part of Kinsey's legacy was transforming the American legal landscape that reduced penalties for pedophiles and sexual criminals. Like, why is that always one of the tip of the spear issues? Because of what a powerful driver sex is. Now, when used in its proper function, in its proper telos, it's also incredibly powerful, right? For building cultures, civilizations, the family. But when it spins out of control, it also destroys everything. So I guess the question is, what is sex for? And what is the secular view of sex? Now, I know this sounds sort of like different than how we opened the show, but it's really not. Because if you think that this companion robot, which can be your girlfriend, quote unquote, is in 10 years isn't going to have an artificial vagina for dudes who are already addicted to porn to be able to purchase and have sex with, you're an idiot if you think if it's not going to go there. It is going to go there. Okay? But barring revival and reformation and a rebirth of Christian resistance in America, with pastors and believers spreading the truth, preaching the gospel, discipling the masses, and yes, taking political power to stop some of this insanity. Barring that, guarantee you, in 7 to 10 years, that Melody companion robot will have a artificial vagina that feels very real for sexually addicted young men or old men who just want to diddle a robot. Guarantee you, that's where this is going. Okay? And by the way, you can already buy like a sex robot. It's like a highly enhanced sex doll. It's pretty disgusting and weird. Okay, I did not enjoy the research for this episode for you guys, by the way. Okay, I do it so you don't have to. But now you've got these robots that you can have enhanced with AI, right? That will talk to you, that will actually learn. You understand that these AI systems, they're learning, they're developing, they're getting stronger and better. Okay? Just like, by the way, the robots will. Okay? So, if I'm right in that prediction, then we have to ask the question, what is the secular view of sex that would birth such a monstrosity as sex robots? Okay? The secular view of sex is based on a materialist, Darwinist view of nature. The belief is that our bodies are products of purposeless, random forces, Darwinian forces, and therefore they are morally neutral. Your body is morally neutral. So basically, we're just meat puppets. We're just meat puppets. The resulting belief from this is that we can do with our bodies whatever we want. Our bodies have no moral significance. In other words, your body provides no clues to how you should live. Because to talk about how or ought is to assume a moral objectivism, meaning that there are things that are objectively true. There are things that are objectively good and objectively bad. There is truth and false. There is good and evil. And that we can actually understand those things and we can discuss those things. Because there is a moral universe and that there is a moral law written on our hearts. The materialist view of sex and of our bodies dismisses all moral truths. The body is amoral, not immoral, amoral, meaning it's neutral. It's just stuff. Basically, you're just electrified sludge that just coincidentally, so random, happened to arrange itself into what we now call consciousness. So the real self, which becomes sort of like this animating force, we would call it the soul, but the secular view is that you sort of have this ghost or identity that's separate from your physical body. The self can just then use the body any way it chooses. Does that make sense? So the appetite for sex becomes no different than the appetite for food. It's neutral. It's amoral. So if you have a sexual hunger, indulge it. There's this very interesting author. She's a Catholic writer, but she's a former lesbian, now Catholic writer. Her name is Melinda Selmis. And I thought her observation on this was very simple but very profound. She says, beneath all the pageantry of free sex and self-love, there is a fundamental belief that the body doesn't mean anything, that it is insignificant in a literal sense. It signifies nothing. You can do anything that you like with it. You can pleasure it with a vacuum cleaner, or you can give it away for any reason. It's just sort of a wet machine. What a weird phrase, huh? but what an appropriate way to describe how the secular materialists view the human being. You're just sort of a wet machine, a tool that you can use and exchange for whatever purpose suits your fancy. Therefore, she says, your body is not you. It is just a shell or a juicy robot that the real you, the disembodied ghost, controls. That's her observation. So you're a wet machine and you're a juicy robot. So the secular view of sex is that you are a ghost in a sex machine. And the machine is just that, a machine. It's not a person. It doesn't have a soul. You're basically just a computer. That's what a robot is. Okay? So whatever you can do to that machine that feels good for your authentic self, you should do. So morality becomes reduced to avoiding pain and increasing pleasure. This is like, by the way, like completely Rousseauian and Hobbesian, Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Thomas Hobbes. Like this stuff goes back hundreds of years, right? So if the body is irrelevant, if the body is meaningless and not in any way connected to moral truths, then the logical implication is that you should enhance pleasure and avoid pain and discomfort. What other point is there to life if your body is completely meaningless and irrelevant? So if the main goal is comfort and pleasure, then taking into account this partner of yours, taking them into account as a whole individual, as a whole person, well, that just gets in the way of what? Of increasing pleasure and avoiding pain, because you're just a wet machine. As Melinda Selmas writes, she says, when sex is reduced to an exchange of pleasures, the other person's personality becomes a burden. That dog'll hunt, by the way. That'll preach right there. That's a hell of a statement. When sex is reduced to an exchange of pleasures, the other person's personality becomes a burden. The secular ethic of sex ends up depersonalizing sex, right? So what is the logical next step? Pornography, obviously. That's literally the definition of porn. Depersonalized sex. The person's not there. You're not with a person. You're looking at a screen. That you couldn't come up with a better definition of pornography. Depersonalized sex. Why? Because you're just a meat puppet, a wet machine, and a juicy robot. So why do I have to listen to your desires and your concerns and your dreams, okay? Just give me a blowjob. I'm telling you, that's where this goes. Actually, Bill Burr, the comedian, and he's crass sometimes, as many comedians are, but you'll notice that good comedians are very prescient. They're very prophetic. Why? Because of that old truism. It's funny because it's true. Think about that. It's funny because it's true. The funniest jokes are jokes about things that are true, not things that are false. About things that are real, not things that are fake. So therefore, the good comedian is always a student of culture, because they have to make jokes about the real world, about how the real world operates, and how funny that sometimes is. So a good comedian is always a student of culture. And a student of culture oftentimes becomes somewhat of a cultural prophet. They become very prophetic. So Bill Burr, in his Netflix skit, Paper Tiger, I think is what it's called. I just rewatched it the other day. I don't recommend it to young minds or even to junior hires or high schoolers, it does get crass, okay? So this is not Seth Gruber's endorsement of Bill Burr, but there are some hilarious moments of his Netflix special, Paper Tiger. And he jokes about this. He jokes about robot sex and how eventually we will become so depersonalized that we won't not only will we not be able to have a real relationship, an authentic relationship with another woman, ideally like someone that would be your wife, but such a relationship and such relationships will in and of themselves become a burden. When a robot can give you sex whenever you want it, and when it reaches the point that it quote unquote feels, okay, quote unquote, just as good, what will that do to the modern man? Think about that. And that's what Bill Burr jokes about in his special. He literally makes the joke, okay, content warning, okay, this show's not family friendly once again. He jokes about it reaching the point when a dude walks home from work and walks into the house and is like, I clearly walked into the house. Why are you not blowing me right now? Why am I not being pleasured right now? Because man in his depraved, fallen state will become that disgusting. Will want to just get home and receive sexual pleasure the second he walks into the door. And when a robot can offer that, why deal with the emotions, feelings, desires, and soul of a real woman? Now, I'm not saying any of that's good. I'm just saying that that's obviously where it's going to end up. So given the secular view of sex, that you're juicy robots, wet machines, and meat puppets, whose sole purpose in life is pleasure and the avoidance of pain, then sex naturally becomes depersonalized. Because you're objectifying the woman for your sexual pleasures, right? When the Bible says, right, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart, it's simply saying, don't objectify women. Because objectification means stripping someone of their identity and reducing them to the objects of sexual lust. Okay? So, for example, the hookup movement, right? Or hookup culture. In a way, that's depersonalized sex. It's still with a person, but you're depersonalizing the person. That's what objectification is. And why not, given the secular view of sex? So naturally, the logical implication of this view of the body and this view of sex is pornography. Another layer deeper of depersonalized sex. The person watching disconnects the woman's body from any interest or care for who she is as a person. So you can treat the body as an object for your own purposes and desires. And, you know, I mean, we've had Jaco Booyens on the show. We've had Joshua Broom on the show to discuss this. We should probably discuss it more given the pornography epidemic in this nation. But the average age of a young boy who is exposed to porn is now 8 years old. 8 years old. If he gets hooked on pornography at 8 years old and he keeps it a secret, he doesn't get help, he doesn't tell anyone, it remains a secret addiction. That young boy will likely have been regularly watching porn for a full decade before he ever enters into any meaningful or serious relationship. A decade puts him at 18. So let's say 19, 20 years old, he's now dating, he'd like to find a wife. And he's been addicted to pornography for half of or more than half of his life. What effect do you think that has on his ability to have a real relationship with a real person? He's been depersonalizing sex for more than half of his life. I think he will prefer the pornography. Time magazine reported in 2016 They said many of these men are simply unable to experience a sexual response with a real live woman. They are only able to respond to pornography. In fact, they prefer it. That was Time Magazine in 2016. And there have now been countless studies on this. For the first time in human history, okay, young men are struggling with erectile dysfunction. I mean, because those are your most, okay, like virile years, right? Your most sexually energetic years, okay? Most libido. That was not a thing that young men would have ED problems. Now they do. Why? Obviously because of pornography. They literally prefer not going to the trouble of dealing with a real person. Talk about depersonalizing sex. Is that not pornography? Donis Freitas, who wrote a great book, The End of Sex, interviewed hundreds of students who were a part of hookup culture for the research for her book. And she concluded that hookup culture, she said, quote, creates a drastic divide between physical intimacy and emotional intimacy. She said that it teaches young people to not reckon with someone's personhood. Wow. That hookup culture taught young people to not reckon with someone's personhood. What does that mean? It means that you are more than a body, right? But I don't know if you've heard how that sort of secular ethic and secular view of the body and sex sometimes bubbles up in our culture. I don't know I don't know if like you guys remember this, but with BLM time and that whole George Floyd and critical race theory, it's still a thing, by the way, obviously. Critical race theory is in a ton of our classrooms. But when that was like the thing everyone was talking about in 2020 and 2021, you would often hear the left refer to black people as black bodies. Do you remember that? They say black bodies. And I always thought that was so weird. Like, why don't you just call them people? Well, that's that secular view of the body and sex, that you're just a juicy robot. You're just a body. Well, but we would say, no, you're a lot more than a body. Your body is you, but you're a body and soul unity. You are both things. What does the secular view of sex do? It teaches young people to objectify and therefore dismiss that individual as a whole person, to not reckon with their personhood, as Donna Frieda says. By the way, let me say this. Maybe the reason we can't respect the full personhood of babies is because we live in a sexualized culture that has taught us to ignore the full personhood of our one-night stand. You understand what I'm saying? Jennifer Fulwiler puts it this way. A society can respect human life only to the extent that it respects the act that creates human life. It's a hell of a statement. A society can respect human life only to the extent that it respects the act that creates human life. In other words, until you respect and honor what sex is and what it was intended for, you will not respect the sanctity of human life. If you don't respect the sanctity of the act that creates human beings, you will not respect the personhood of human beings. I sound like a Catholic now. I'm not. But this is why often at events, people come up to me and the Catholics say, "You're our favorite Protestant." And they say, "You should come home." And I say, "I am home." But anyways, but this is a very Catholic. The Catholics have done more to develop a very good theology of the body than Protestants have. They have thought deeper about these issues. I freely admit that. And there's probably quite a bit that Protestants need to learn from the Catholics on a good theology of the body. Now, I obviously recommend my friend Dr. Nancy Pearcey as, I think, the top Protestant thinker right now on a lot of these issues. Her book, Love Thy Body, will change your life. But this all stems from the secular view of sex. So what's the next logical step from this secular view of sex and the body? From a hookup culture that depersonalizes sex by only focusing on your desires and your pleasure and not reckoning with this one-night stand as a full person, to pornography, another level of depersonalizing sex that involves no persons, because the person's on the screen, they ain't with you, it ain't your wife, that forces the viewer to cave in on themselves even more, to look at themselves even more, to focus on their desires and pleasures even more, then what's the next logical step? Robot sex, obviously. Sex robots, that's obviously the next step. In 2017, the first sex doll brothel opened in Barcelona, Spain. That was 2017. You could pay to go to a brothel and have quote unquote sex with a doll. Okay? And futurists have been predicting for a while that we're probably 10 years or so out until sex robots will become more popular than pornography. Now, these Realbotics robots that were unveiled this month at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas are selling for something like $175,000. But you know how a free market capitalistic systems works, right? It's always a race to the cheapest price while still turning a profit. That's how it works. It's only a matter of time until the technology is so widely available and so enhanced and refined that most people will be able to get a sex robot. That's how it's going to work. And then you're going to be able to buy them used, right? So people who are poorer, who still have a depraved mind and they want one too, will be able to buy it used. That's where all of this is going to go. And remember, the newest and best technologies are usually attempted and perfected in the world of porn before they work their way into broader society in more innocuous ways. That's almost always what happens. Joshua Broom just made this point on the Seth Gruber Show the other day. He said the best technology is always sort of innovated, perfected, and practiced and tried first in the world of pornography. So this whole thing going on right now where you can create AI pornography and you can wear virtual reality headsets and you can, like, it looks like you're having sex with the neighbor you have a crush on. Like, you can take someone's face picture from online and create AI pornography out of that. That's obviously going to happen with the robots. In fact, the CEO of Realbotics, Andrew Kiggle, when he was being interviewed, okay, at the Las Vegas show, he said he was holding up these faces, you know, silicone faces that they put on the robots. And he says that you can order what face you want. If you want it to look like someone that passed that you love or something like that. Yeah, like, we don't even have legislation around this stuff yet. What happens when some rich pornographer weirdo in 5 years, when these things have artificial vaginas, orders one and gets the face to look like a movie star or the girl he has a crush on in the sorority? Like, we're going to have laws around this kind of stuff. No one's going to be okay with that. This stuff is innovating quicker than we can legislate. The same secular materialist philosophy that has taught generations of people that they are merely complex machines and our bodies are completely amoral will now usher in the next logical outcome: the substitution of machines for real persons. Talk about depersonalizing sex, huh? Where there's not even a person in the equation at all anymore. With pornography, the person's on the screen, and it is a real person, but you're objectifying and depersonalizing what sex is for your own gratification. The next level is no person on the receiving end at all. A robot. Sex with a machine who's always ready to romp and doesn't have those, complex emotions and feelings. You think we're not depraved enough to go there? Then you don't understand human nature. People who think that humans are basically or essentially good are idiots who do not know their history, by the way. Anyone who thinks that human nature is fundamentally or essentially or mostly good are fools. Now, eternity is written on the heart of man. We were still created by God. Like, the murderer, like the old New York mobs, right? Did you know, like, the mobs took really good care of women and children? Oh yeah, they were killing other people and stealing and stuff, but like their wives and daughters were well taken care of. So all sinners still have, good virtues to them. But if you believe that human nature is mostly or fundamentally good, you are an idiot. If our culture does not change, if the church and Christians do not speak up and get involved, and we continue on our crash course, we will have robots available for sex on a rent basis and a purchase basis, right? You can lease it, right? Or a finance plan or whatever, buy it outright. Sex robot brothels within 20 years, if nothing changes. Let's say 15 years. That's where all of this is going. And it all comes from the same ideas that brought us the sexual revolution, the same ideas that brought us feminism, the same ideas that brought us the redefinition of marriage, and the same ideas that have brought us transgenderism and abortion. If we don't understand those ideas and why something like this would happen, and happen so quickly apparently, then we won't be able to reverse engineer the sexual revolution. One of my favorite lines in the film, The 1916 Project, is from Hilaire Belloc. He says, "To comprehend the history of a thing is to unlock the mysteries of its present, and more, to discover the profundities of its future." To comprehend the history of something is to unlock the mysteries of its present, meaning the mysteries of how it's unfolding now. But more, to discover the profundities of its future, meaning where this thing goes moving forward if nothing changes. So if we don't understand the bad theology of the body that has ushered in what is on the horizon now, robot sex, and the church isn't willing or able to articulate a different vision, the biblical vision, the Christian vision, an answer to what sex is for, what your body is for, then people are going to continue mixing these philosophical, cultural cocktails of ideas to find new ways to reinvent ourselves, to create a utopia on earth. And that's really what most of the anti-Christian, secular, humanist leftists have attempted to do over the last 200 years, is to create a utopia on earth. I mean, really, that goes back to the ziggurats, right? Really, that goes back to Babel. To build something up to heaven, right? Rather rather than, waiting for heaven to come down to earth, we're going to build up to heaven and create a utopia on earth. That's what drives every secular attempt to reinvent ourselves, to reinvent human nature. Of course, the biblical Christian answer to all of that is that actually heaven came down so that we didn't have to go up to heaven, right? A lot of these innovations that are with artificial intelligence, I'm telling you, these robots are going to become sex robots. They're already saying it can be your girlfriend. They're creating them super busty to look like unrealistic porn stars. There's a reason for that. Okay. A lot of these innovations, by the way, are going to be used to try to enhance the human being. So it's not enough that we're depersonalizing real people and that we're now creating machines to do for us what other people are supposed to do in the context of a marriage. Or it says as a friend, right? You could buy one of these robotics robots for companionship rather than, I don't know, go out and meet someone and make friends, right? It's not just that. It's that we also want to perfect ourselves through innovations and experiments, okay? And it's a podcast for another time. We'll have a guest on to talk about all of that stuff. But it is man's attempt to become God. There will become digital and innovative technologies that will begin to become available to integrate into the human body that will make us, quote unquote, more efficient, more productive, and more powerful. And some of that's already here. But a lot of that is going to become more and more available, more and more sought after, and more popular over the next 10 years. That is man's attempt to become a god. But the Christian answer is that God became a man and was murdered so that you could become a small g God, so that you could be forgiven of your sins and truly have eternal life. My point in all of this is how theological all of these ideas are. We like to say at the White Rose Resistance, the culture war was always a proxy war for a far deeper spiritual war, or that all human conflict is ultimately theological. But there are consequences to these things. What does freely available robot sex that's now more popular than pornography due to the cultural consciousness of America and to the next generation of young minds and individuals who will be in charge of leading this country? What do you think that does to the social fabric, to the culture? I'll tell you, depopulation, not enough children, not enough human beings, not at replacement rate, and a sexually addicted society of docile citizens who will give over their birthright for not a bowl of porridge, but for a sex robot. Those who are addicted to pleasure are slaves and therefore very easy to control. A man has as many masters as he has vices. And so by promoting vice, the regime promotes slavery, which can then be fashioned into a form of political control. In other words, addicted citizens addicted to pleasure will give over anything for more pleasure. They're therefore very easy to bargain with, and they're therefore very easy to control. In a society of a sexually addicted culture with depersonalized sex and sex robots, you will have a more elitist regime exercising more power over the people, more tyranny, and less ability for the free man to live how he wants without being under the thumb of the government. It means more tyranny, more government control, and it means that the state has to step in and deal with broken families that the common man is no longer, quote unquote, able to lead or to steward or to take care of. When the family disintegrates and everything is broken, the government always has to step in to rebuild the puzzle piece, to try to mitigate some of the damage. And this is why healthy families and healthy families are always a threat to central planners, to elitists, socialists that want a very powerful government. Because as goes the family, so goes the culture. As goes the culture, so goes the society. And as goes the society, so goes the government. You want to change what kind of politics you have? You want to change what kind of political leaders you have? Start fighting at home first. We need enough people in America who are going to reject the trajectory of the sexual revolution and of our culture, which now is on the breaking edge, I'm telling you, of sex robots for lease, for finance, for purchase, or at your local brothel. That's where all of this is going. I want to finish with an insight from G.K. Chesterton in 1928. You want to talk about someone who was prescient, by the way. Chesterton said, sex is an instinct that produces an institution. Because it produces, he says, and it is positive and not negative, noble and not base, creative and not destructive, because it produces this institution. That institution is the family, a small state or commonwealth, which has hundreds of aspects. When it is once started, that are not sexual at all. It includes worship, justice, festivity, decoration, instruction, camaraderie, repose. Sex is the gate of that house. And romantic and imaginative people naturally like looking through a gateway. But the house is very much larger than the gate. But there are indeed a certain number of people who like to hang out about the gate and never get any further. So what is sex for? It's for procreation. Who procreates? Families. What is sex for? For building families that become small commonwealths or polities that turn into villages, that turn into cities, that turn into counties, that turn into governments that then require policies and laws to steward and to help that commonwealth flourish. This is the cultural mandate. It's the first commandment given to Adam and Eve, to be fruitful and multiply, and then to subdue the earth. Subdue the earth. So sex is an instinct that produces an institution. But there are plenty of people who like to hang out at the gate and never go any further. Sex is the gate to that house, says Chesterton. So what is sex for? It's for families, and it's for kingdom building. If we only hang out at the gate and we only want the pleasure associated with sex and not the telos that it was designed for, chaos and heartbreak will always and inevitably ensue. Why? Because you're not using it the way that it was created to be used. It is not glorious because it is not in accordance with its purpose. And when you continue to use something that's not in accordance with its purpose for something else, it eventually breaks down, right? This table is glorious because it allows me to look good and sit and hold my items for the sake of this show. But if I begin to use this table for my woodworking shop or for my metal shop, it's going to break down really quick because that's not what it was made for. We could give thousands of other examples, but we have misunderstood and failed to live out what sex is for. We're now so far down the stream of that breakdown that Las Vegas's electronic show is now premiering romantic companion robots, one tick away from the kind of dystopia you might associate with the film Ex Machina, but which is really right around the corner for America. Crazy, crazy, crazy. That's why we at the White Rose Resistance try to reawaken the church to lead on these issues, because we've got all the answers. And we know that the answer has a name, by the way. Jesus Christ, the God who became a man. Thanks for tuning in to the Seth Gruber Show today. Head on over to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Give the show a rating and review. Let us know what you think. We really appreciate it. Subscribe at Rumble to help the show in case YouTube ever gets rid of the show. And head on over to the whiterose.life and become an ally of the White Rose Resistance at $35 a month. Get your battle box, and $70 a month you get your you join our book club, Books in the Barracks. We just read Megan Basham's book, Shepherds for Sale, and we talked about it on our Zoom call with our book club members. Thank you guys so much. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.